Have you ever given so much of yourself to others that one day you looked inward and found almost nothing left? Maybe you said yes when every part of you was screaming no. Maybe you kept showing up for everyone around you while quietly disappearing from yourself. Maybe you have spent so long watering everyone else's garden that your own soil has quietly turned to dust. My name is Eli, and today's story is about a woman who gave everything she had until there was nothing left to give, and the old gardener who taught her that a garden picked bare cannot sustain life. In a small town surrounded by rolling hills, there lived a young woman named Elara. Elara was the kind of person everyone called first. When a friend needed help, Elara was there. When a colleague needed coverage, Elara agreed without hesitation. When her family needed support, Elara set aside her own plans without a second thought. She genuinely loved helping. In the beginning, giving felt natural, like water flowing from a full well. But somewhere along the way, the well began to drop. She started waking up tired, even after a full night of sleep. She said yes to things she wanted to say no to, then lay awake feeling hollow and resentful. She smiled through interactions that drained her, then drove home wondering why she felt so empty. Still, she kept giving, because deep inside, Elara believed her worth was tied to how much she could offer. The moment she stopped giving, she feared, was the moment she stopped mattering. One spring afternoon, Elara found herself walking through a garden at the edge of town. An old gardener named Mr. Rowan was kneeling beside a bed of roses, tending them with quiet attention. After a while, Mr. Rowan looked up. "You look like someone who has forgotten to water herself," he said gently. Elara smiled tiredly. "I'm fine. I just have a lot going on." Mr. Rowan stood and led her to a corner of the garden where a patch of earth looked dry and cracked, its plants struggling beside others in full bloom. "This section used to be the most generous in the garden," he said. "Every season we harvested heavily without giving back. Now look at it." "What happened?" Elara asked. "We took more than it could sustain," Mr. Rowan said simply. "We confused its willingness to give with an unlimited supply. Every garden has limits. Every well has a bottom. A gardener who forgets to tend their own soil will eventually have nothing left to offer." Elara stared at the dry earth quietly. Mr. Rowan continued. "When was the last time you did something purely for yourself? Not for someone else, just for you?" Elara opened her mouth, then closed it. She could not remember. "A well that is never refilled does not give more water," Mr. Rowan said. "It simply runs dry. And a person who gives endlessly from depletion does not create connection. They create resentment, burnout, and eventually silence." Elara felt something shift quietly inside her. "The kindest thing you can do for the people you love," Mr. Rowan said softly, "is to make sure you are still standing tomorrow." Elara returned home that evening and sat quietly for a long time. For the first time in years, she asked herself an honest question. What do I actually need right now? The answer was simple: rest, quiet, an evening entirely her own. She turned off her phone, made herself tea, sat by the window and did nothing that served anyone but herself. It felt strange at first, almost guilty. But beneath the guilt, something softer was there, something that felt in a way she had nearly forgotten, like relief. In the days that followed, Elara began pausing before saying yes, asking herself whether she had genuine capacity to give, or whether she was drawing from a well already running dry. When a colleague asked her to take on extra work she could not absorb, she said something she had never said before. "I am not able to help with that right now, but I hope you find the right support." The world did not end. The colleague found another solution, and Elara left work that day with more energy than she had felt in months. She returned to Mr. Rowan's garden several weeks later. The dry patch now had small green shoots emerging from the soil. "You watered it," she said. "I stopped harvesting and started tending it," Mr. Rowan replied. "Rest, nourishment, time. It is beginning to recover." "How do I know when I have enough to give again?" Elara asked. "A full well does not need to be forced," Mr. Rowan said. "It overflows naturally. When you give from genuine abundance rather than fear of disappointing someone, that is when you know the well is full again." "And if I set limits," Elara said quietly, "will people think less of me?" "The people who matter will think more of you," Mr. Rowan said, "because they will see someone who respects herself enough to remain." Months passed. Elara did not become selfish. The care she gave became more genuine, more present, because it came from a place no longer running on empty. She still said yes often, but the yes meant something now. It came from abundance rather than depletion. One afternoon, a younger friend came to her, visibly exhausted, saying yes to everything and slowly disappearing from herself. Elara sat with her quietly, and then said something she wished someone had told her years earlier. "You cannot pour from an empty cup. Your garden matters too. Protect the soil, and you will never stop blooming." My perspective on this story is simple. Generosity is one of the most beautiful things a person can offer. But generosity from a depleted place eventually becomes resentment and silence. It stops being a gift and becomes a slow erosion. The most sustainable way to give is from overflow, from the abundance that remains after you have tended your own needs. Saying no when you have nothing left is not unkind. It is honest, and boundaries are not walls. They are the fence around your garden that ensures something worth giving will still be growing tomorrow. If this story reminded you to tend your own soil, please subscribe to Jerry Tales and like this video. Thank you for watching. See you in the next story.